A son discovers his mother bound and gagged and his father in bed riddled with bullets.
They wanted him eliminated and wanted to make sure that it was done.
And in a race against time, Dr. G is the last hope police have of catching the killers.
Can I collect any trace evidence to help link this to these people?
Then, a young woman dies suddenly, and all indications point to an overdose.
She is addicted to drugs and alcohol. She'll take anything.
But in an incredible twist, Dr. G discovers nothing is as it seems.
Oh my God. This case is just not making sense.
Altered lives, baffling medical mysteries, shocking revelations. These are the everyday cases of Dr. G, medical examiner. At the busy District 9 morgue in Orlando, Florida, Dr. G routinely takes on mysterious cases. And because homicides can be some of the most challenging, Dr. G wants to make sure medical students learn to look beyond the obvious.
Why do the autopsy, right? You know the cause, you think you know the manner. And then the police officer says they were fighting over the gun. Was it a distant gunshot wound or was it close range? What could they have done after they got shot? Well, you're not going to know unless you do that autopsy. So when you get done with the case, you should be able to answer every question they have. It's never as straightforward as you think it is. Okie dokie. Thanks, guys. You're welcome.
And today, an exceptionally puzzling case comes into the morgue.
The son comes over to visit and he finds his mom in the closet bound and his dad's dead in bed. This is a disturbing case, there's no question about it.
Now it's up to Dr. G to collect as much information from the body as she can to help police track down the killers.
It's important for law enforcement and me to put this puzzle together. The crime scene is controlled by law enforcement. The body is controlled by the medical examiner. That is my jurisdiction.
It's a cloudy spring morning in Pine Hills, Florida, when 26-year-old Cameron Walker drops by his parents' house.
He always visits them in the morning, and he thought something was up because the car was in the driveway. Dad should have been gone for work.
Cameron becomes alarmed when he sees the front door is wide open.
He hears his mom yelling, and it's muffled. And he finds her in the closet. She's bound, hands and legs, so she couldn't get out.
Cameron quickly unties his mom and immediately calls 911. Within minutes, paramedics arrive and discover a terrifying scene. Cameron's father, John Walker, is lying in bed flat on his back, covered in blood.
There was something very unusual about the case in that he wasn't just on a bed, he was on a waterbed, and clearly he does have multiple gunshot wounds.
The bullets went through John's body, penetrating the bed.
The water clearly was leaking out of the waterbed because of the gunshot wounds.
Lead investigator Detective Mark Hussey, a 35-year veteran of the Orlando Homicide Department, is called to the scene and immediately questions the victim's wife, Patricia Walker. She is clearly shaken, but manages to tell police a harrowing story that began the night before.
3 guys in ski masks break into the house and start demanding money and drugs. She says there's a lot of screaming going on.
She said they asked for money and drugs. They took the victim's wallet and they continued to ransack the house.
She just gets so scared she passes out, then doesn't remember anything.
Detectives discover 7 shell casings, but they only recover 6 bullets from the waterbed. Investigators suspect the missing 7th bullet is still inside John's body.
Then I walked through the scene to see what I could see.
At After a thorough search of the house, investigators do not find a murder weapon, but they do find some potential leads.
There appears to be some pry marks at the door where they got in.
We have had home invasions and burglaries in that area.
If these 3 people are doing random home invasions and shooting people, I mean, this is dangerous. They need to get these guys off the street.
Now, investigators are counting on Dr. G to help piece together enough evidence to catch whoever killed John Walker.
The victim is a 52-year-old black male. Lives with his wife. They've been married a long time. He works at the local hospital as an x-ray technician. The wife works as a hairstylist. He supposedly goes to church, coaches his grandson's basketball games, and it's hard to believe that somebody would want to kill him. This really may be a challenging case. We don't know what's going on, and I'm afraid I may be not having any information for the police with this case. All right, do we have any paperwork on him? No.
With the clock ticking, Dr. G's biggest challenge is to gather enough physical evidence to help police solve this homicide.
They want to solve the case. They don't want this to happen again.
In the District 9 morgue, the body of 52-year-old John Walker, who was shot multiple times in bed, is now being prepped for autopsy.
We had 3 gunshot wounds to heads today, so you gotta keep the story straight.
Yeah.
Dr. G hopes she can collect enough evidence to help solve this case, not only for authorities, but also for the victim's family.
It's a horrific thing for the son to find his dad dead in bed with multiple gunshot wounds. This must be devastating for the wife. I can't imagine what she went through.
That's it.
Dr. G hopes the external exam will yield physical evidence that will lead to the killers.
I may not find any evidence, and I may find evidence. I don't make up evidence. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. I just have to be open to it.
We have his height and weight.
The external is key on this case.
Detective Hussey's here. How are you?
I'm good, yep.
Good, good. This is gonna take all day.
I know. Not my fault. I didn't shoot him.
He looks like a well-groomed 52-year-old African-American gentleman. Can I collect any trace evidence on that body to help link this to these perpetrators?
All right, well, we'll go ahead and take fingernail clippings.
So I'm looking for trace evidence under his nails, specifically DNA trace evidence. And so those nails will be clipped after we photograph them.
Give me a swab, Tommy.
I will take a swab and put a little sterile saline on it and swab any areas that look like there may be the struggle. Maybe the hands, if they got into an altercation, trying to pick up cells left by the perpetrator.
Unfortunately, Dr. G finds no trace evidence.
There's a chance that the waterbed may have made some of the trace evidence disappear.
Although she has had a setback, Dr. G doesn't give up and searches for other clues.
One of the things I'll be looking at is to see if there's any defensive wounds. Was he fighting with them? I'm going to look for scratches on his body.
Go ahead and undress him.
After a thorough exam, Dr. G does not find any evidence of a struggle.
Nothing. There is no evidence.
Did you notice this one over here?
No.
He's got a lot of gunshot wounds. There are 7 entrance gunshot wounds.
Let's look and see what the exit wounds look like.
I'm interested, though, in where these bullets go. So I document all my exit wounds, and it looks like 6 exit gunshot wounds. 6 bullets actually go through him. So there should be 1 projectile in him, and that's confirmed on X-ray. 1 projectile in him.
There it is.
Then, Dr. G looks carefully for any gunshot residue, hoping to reconstruct the crime and figure out how far away the victim's killers were when they shot him.
We need to look for evidence that may give me information about the distance between the end of the barrel and the skin.
If the shooters were within 3 feet of the victim, there would be tattooing or abrasions caused by gunpowder left on the skin.
There's one on his face, right at the jawline, with some very sparse powder tattooing, and the one on his left arm has very sparse, just a couple stray gunpowder flakes. So these all look like they're at least 2 to 3 feet away. We can almost place this person right at the side of the bed.
What do you think? The shooter was standing at the foot of the bed?
I think it was at the foot and a little to the left.
Okay.
The close proximity of the killers to the victim paints a disturbing picture.
It's overkill. It shows that whoever did this had some kind of personal dislike, if you will, for the victim, and I think that they wanted to make sure that that he was dead.
Although Dr. G is finishing up her external exam, so far she has found little evidence that could lead to the killers of 52-year-old John Walker.
I'm afraid I may not end up with any useful information or helpful information for the police.
Dr. G has just finished the external exam on 52-year-old John Walker, and so far she has found little evidence that will help police catch his killers.
All of these projectiles indicated that this shooting was probably about 3 feet away.
Now Dr. G is hoping the internal exam will yield clues that will help solve this murder.
I just want the truth to be known and the right person to be charged with this crime.
Dr. G's next step is to analyze the path of the bullets to gain insight into the victim's last moments. Dr. G starts by examining the 2 gunshot wounds to the head and neck.
The one caused a skull fracture, really didn't cause much injury to the brain. The one in his neck just goes out beneath the scalp, doesn't really hit any major vessels in his neck, didn't really do much. So those don't kill him.
Next, Dr. G makes the standard Y incision across John Walker's chest.
You have to be very attentive at the initial part of that Y incision because you don't want to disrupt anything, because you want to find the path of those projectiles.
She then immediately takes samples from John's pelvic veins for a toxicology test.
I go ahead and take my toxicology from his iliac veins because toxicology may be important in this case. We certainly don't expect this 52-year-old man who works every day to have drugs in his system. But I'll tell you, the vast majority of home invasions we see are usually of drug dealers or people who deal drugs or something to do with the drug trade.
Dr. G puts a rush on the toxicology and then moves on, removing the chest plate in order to follow the paths of the remaining bullets.
How many are lethal? What could he have done after that gunshot wound? Did they kill him right away? What's going on? But you cannot say for sure until you get inside and you follow the path of that projectile through the body, and then you document what harm that bullet did to the inside of the body until it exits.
We got a lot of blood now.
Dr. G moves on to examine the gunshot wound in the victim's arm.
It goes through his arm, just the muscle of his arm, kind of behind the bone, and comes upward and exits.
She also examines the bullet wounds to the shoulder, chest, and one above the left nipple.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All of those bullets probably were survivable except for the one through his heart. The projectile that entered just outside of that left nipple goes upward and completely destroys that heart. It goes through the right ventricle, the left ventricle, part of the atrium, part of the pulmonary artery. It ruins the tricuspid valve. So it is a mess. I recover the one projectile that killed him, and that's the one that destroys the heart.
That could have been really hard to find. That really did a lot of damage.
I weigh it, I measure it. It's a medium caliber. It was slightly deformed, but it looks like a .38 to me.
Dr. G gives the bullet to Detective Hussey, who will send it to ballistics to see if it matches the ones found at the scene. In the meantime, she takes a closer look to see if the path the bullets took can tell her anything else about how the murder went down.
What could he have done after these projectiles go through his body? Was he getting out of bed? Did he struggle?
After looking at the angles the bullets entered and exited the victim's body, Dr. G makes a key discovery.
Wow, look at that. All of these projectiles are going upward. Almost very similar angles. That actually tells me a lot. What that tells me is somebody shooting him basically while he's flat in bed. He never moved. Well, what's that about?
During the internal exam of 52-year-old John Walker, who was shot multiple times, Dr. G has just made a startling discovery.
This guy didn't move at all. So somebody's just unloading in this fellow while he's in that bed. You know, this isn't adding up. Why didn't he try to get out of the way?
Most of the time, a victim's not going to let someone stand there and shoot him, okay? I mean, that's just not human nature. You know, he would have tried to defend himself.
The wife's story that there was screaming going on, 3 guys in ski masks demanding drugs and alcohol. It's just not making sense.
Dr. G is puzzled as to why the victim didn't move as he was being shot 7 times. And after learning from the crime lab that no DNA was found on her swabs, she has only one place left to look for answers: the toxicology report.
We're going to look to see if any of the illicit drugs, because does this home invasion have anything to do with some extracurricular activity this guy may be involved in?
2 weeks later, Dr. G gets the results from the toxicology lab. And while there's no trace of illegal drugs in John's body, there's one finding that catches her eye.
He did have a very high level of diphenhydramine, 3 times the upper level of what you would use as a sleep aid. Now, diphenhydramine is fairly safe. You need lots of it to kill you, but that would really be enough to make him fall asleep.
Now she knows why the victim wasn't moving as he was being riddled with bullets.
This clearly knocked him out. He was sleeping the whole time. Well, what's that about?
Dr. G immediately calls Detective Hussey to report her findings to him, and he shares the results of the ballistics test done on the bullet taken from John's body.
We compare the projectiles taken from the victim's body and the projectiles that we discovered at the scene, and all those bullets were fired from the same gun. So the indication is that we're only looking for one shooter.
This wife has some more explaining to do.
I recontacted the victim's wife and asked her if she would come to the Orange County Sheriff's Office for another interview. I told her that as we continued with our investigation, there were some discrepancies and we needed to talk to her again and try to clear some of these things up.
Detective Hussey talks to the wife again and confronts her with the information that the medical examiner said he didn't get up and tried to fight these defendants.
She initially stuck to her story about the home invasion. She reiterated the fact that there were 3 individuals, and I let her finish her story, and then I told her the results of the tox. I told her about all of the evidence that we had collected, and I told her basically that her story did not fit the physical evidence.
Faced with Dr. G's autopsy findings, Patty Walker finally caves under the pressure and tells a different story.
Her second story is that the guy's a jerk. He abuses her. There was alcohol involved. They were drinking. He became abusive to her like he always does. She admits to putting a large amount of diphenhydramine, a sleep aid, in his drink to get him to go to sleep.
And then he went to bed, and she waited till he was asleep, went in and got his revolver out of the bedroom, out of a drawer, and she shot him as he slept.
She then tries to make the house look like it's been ransacked. She actually puts pry marks on the door so it looks like somebody pried the door open.
Then Patty tells Detective Hussey something that doesn't add up. She says she tied herself up and got in the closet, but he doubts she could have done that without help. So he digs a little deeper.
Now, interesting, they were able to match her cell phone records from her saying when this home invasion occurred, and she supposedly passed out and tied up. They look at her cell phone records. She's making phone calls. Who's she making phone calls to? Her male friend.
We discovered that she had a boyfriend, and that she'd been seeing this individual on the side.
Detectives track down Patty Walker's boyfriend, 45-year-old Derek Moreno.
We confronted him with the evidence that we had. He admitted that he had gotten a call from this victim's wife telling him that she had killed her husband and that she needed his help.
Derek admits to police that he helped tie up Patty and then hid the murder weapon.
He took it to his home and buried it in the backyard. Our forensics people came out and dug up the gun and collected it.
And with that, the final piece of evidence needed for an arrest is uncovered.
The gun that the gentleman friend gave to Detective Hussey, they test fired that, and that matched the bullet that I pulled out of the victim. He clearly just gave it up. There was nothing he said that they couldn't confirm, and so everything made sense. So it all pointed to her.
Thanks to Dr. G and Detective Hussey's teamwork, Patricia Walker is charged with second-degree murder and is sentenced to 22 years in prison.
It was a horrible thing to do, kill somebody in their sleep, and justice is served.
Patty's friend, Derek Moreno, is found guilty of being an accessory after the fact and is sentenced to 2 years of house arrest and 2 years of probation.
Her male friend didn't get off scot-free.
Without the physical evidence and without the information from the medical examiner's office, we may very well have just taken her at face value and moved on and looking for 3 individuals that didn't exist.
The most rewarding part is that somebody doesn't get by with a murder, and that I was able to add a little piece of the puzzle to help Detective Hussey get the correct perpetrator.
Dr. G knows all too well about untimely deaths.
It's clearly something we see in the morgue on a regular basis.
So when a young woman's life ends suddenly, she is determined to uncover the truth.
This is a 38-year-old woman that just found dead at her brother's house. We don't know really what her cause of death is going to be until we do that autopsy.
It's a chilly winter morning in St. Cloud, Florida, and Robert Sanchez is late for work. But before he heads out the door, he checks on his younger sister, Isabel, who came to stay with him a few days ago.
They were fairly close because they were orphaned at an early age, but she's basically a street person except when she comes to live with him. He keeps a room for her. She hasn't been feeling well the past few days. She felt tired. She's been in bed.
Robert finds her unresponsive. He immediately calls 911, and paramedics race to the scene.
No signs of life. She was dead.
Police arrive and immediately question Isabel's brother. Robert tells investigators that his sister has struggled with addiction all her life.
He knows she's used both crack and regular cocaine. She'll take anything, illicit or prescription. And she has been an alcoholic for most of her life. Her brother tried to keep her straight, but it was a task he just couldn't do. It was devastating for him.
Investigators search the house thoroughly for any evidence.
The police have to look for drugs, look for drug paraphernalia, look for anything that's out of place. They don't find anything.
Now it's up to Dr. G to put the pieces of the puzzle together.
There's a lot of possibilities. Ultimately, we have to figure it out.
At the busy District 9 morgue, the body of 38-year-old Isabel Sanchez, who died suddenly under mysterious circumstances, has just arrived.
The only family she has is this older brother who periodically takes her in. She's basically a street person on and off.
Dr. G turns to Isabel's case history, hoping it will shed some light on the cause of Isabel's sudden death.
That's interesting. She's been in the hospital several times for overdoses. She has had several near-death experiences with very high levels of everything from alcohol to cocaine to opiates.
And to make matters worse, Isabel had recently shared some devastating news with her brother.
Her brother said several weeks ago she told him that she was diagnosed with breast cancer and that she was receiving chemotherapy. He said she came back from one of her cancer treatments and didn't feel good. And in fact, he said she hasn't been wanting to eat the day before she dies. She felt tired and just wanted to go to bed.
Dr. G will also have to consider a darker scenario.
Maybe she's had enough. She knows what kind of life she's leading. Now she's got this diagnosis of cancer. And maybe that was the coup de grace. Is it a suicide? I don't know. Foul play and trauma were never high on my radar. Of course, because of her lifestyle, I have to consider foul play. It'll be interesting to see what the autopsy shows. Do the external, I need to see what her state of health is. When I first see her, I'm taken aback. She looks bad. She looks very ill. She's got overall poor muscle mass. Is that cocaine? Is that cancer? Is that just her lifestyle? Does she have a chronic infection? All of those things could cause this. I'm looking for just minor trauma that may suggest a struggle. I start looking for any kind of contusion, bruises. There's nothing here. No evidence of any type of trauma.
Dr. G sees no external signs of suicide or foul play, but she will have to complete the autopsy to rule them out.
Look at this.
I palpate her breast, and she does have a breast mass. I can feel very firm nodule, at least 3 centimeters in that right breast, just above the nipple.
Dr. G wonders if the cancer is what killed Isabel or if her death was caused by something else.
So it'll be interesting to see why she dies. The answers are going to lie in the autopsy.
Let me open her up and see how, if I see anything.
We might just find some swelling in her brain from the drugs and alcohol. We might find a stroke. This could be the cause of death. And I'm also going to be looking for any kind of metastasis. Certainly the cancer can spread more than they had realized. Oftentimes we might find it in the brain.
Dr. G's morgue tech, Tom Hemphill, pulls back Isabel's scalp and saws open the skull, revealing the brain.
Let's see it. I section her brain and I don't see anything out of the ordinary. There's no evidence of foul play.
So far, nothing.
She certainly doesn't have any metastasis. No signs of stroke. Her brain does not look like it's the cause of death.
Let's see what else is going on.
With her scalpel in hand, Dr. G makes the standard Y incision down Isabel's torso. Then she collects blood samples from the iliac veins for the toxicology analysis.
She's used both crack and cocaine. She's a chronic alcoholic. We know she's into prescription drugs. So you bet my main focus is going to be getting enough blood for toxicology.
Dr. G puts a rush on the results. They won't be back for several days, so she focuses on Isabel's breast cancer.
We don't know much about her breast cancer. I need to biopsy it. So I take multiple sections of that firm white mass in an area of yellow fat. I'll remove part of that and save some of it so I can look at it under the microscope to read if it's cancer or not.
Next, Dr. G turns her attention to Isabel's heart.
Try the heart.
The first thing I do is weigh the heart. It was of normal size. I look at the coronaries. Her coronaries looked good. Her heart appeared normal.
Her heart doesn't look bad at all.
Normal size, normal shape. Then we look at the lungs.
And at first glance, Dr. G sees that Isabel's lungs are anything but ordinary.
They look much worse than smokers' lungs, if you can believe it.
That's nasty.
Is that the cause of death?
Dr. G has just come across an unusual finding in the lungs of 38-year-old Isabel Sanchez, who was found dead at her brother's house after feeling ill.
Her lungs do not look normal. Oh, they are the grayest, blackest looking things that you'll see. I clearly know that she smokes crack cocaine.
Now, Dr. G removes the lungs and begins dissecting them. After examining them closely, she sees no signs of lung cancer.
I don't see any metastasis. I don't see any tumor nodules in them. The breast cancer certainly didn't go to the lungs, which breast cancer often does. I didn't see any of that. Also, we're looking for blood clots. because some cancers cause a hypercoagulable state, and she didn't have any blood clots. She did not die from a pulmonary embolus. All right. They looked ugly, but they looked functional.
Yeah. I don't see much else going on here.
Given Isabel's history of alcohol abuse, Dr. G carefully examines her liver, hoping it will provide some clues.
Well, according to the brother, she's a chronic alcoholic. One of the common things we see with alcohol is going to be cirrhosis. She does look like she has abused alcohol. She's kind of got a rounded liver and somewhat yellow, but I've seen much worse. She doesn't have any evidence of cirrhosis. I don't know.
Dr. G moves on from the liver to the pancreas, and finally something catches her eye.
Oh my God. There is something abnormal in her pancreas. There is kind of a edema or fluid buildup in some of the tissues surrounding the pancreas. And the pancreas itself looks like there's some hemorrhage in it. There's little areas of necrosis or kind of a dissolving of the fat surrounding the pancreas.
It looks terrible.
She clearly has pancreatitis, inflammation of your pancreas. I don't know if it was enough to kill her. If the pancreatitis was widespread enough, that certainly could have caused her death.
But Dr. G won't know if it's severe enough to kill her until she looks at the tissue under the microscope.
We've got some of the pieces, but we don't have all the pieces, and we don't know how it fits together. We know she has a mass in her breast. Was that cancer or not? We know she likes to drink any kind of alcohol she can get her hands on and use any kind of drug she can get her hands on. Is that the cause of death? At this point, I still don't know why she died.
We're gonna have to do a lot of tests, look under the microscope, and actually do some investigation also. See what we can find out about her.
The toxin micros, I don't know if they're gonna come up with the answer or not, but they're gonna give us pieces to the puzzle. I will look under the microscope to see the extent of the pancreatitis, just as I'll look under the microscope to see if her breast cancer is breast cancer or not. That's fibrous tissue. Doggone it, she was lying. She was never diagnosed with cancer. I hate to say this, she's claiming she has cancer so she can get more drugs. People are sympathetic to people with cancer. You know, I'm seeing more and more people lying about that so they can get drugs. It's sad.
When Dr. G examines the pancreatic tissue under the microscope, she makes an important finding.
She clearly has some pancreatitis, but I don't think it's enough to cause her death. I think that at this point, toxicology is going to be the answer. I'm expecting a mixed bag of alcohol and maybe prescription drugs with some illicit drugs. Lo and behold, her toxicology doesn't take a long time, which surprised me. Her toxicology was completely negative. She had no alcohol, she had no illicit drugs, and she had no prescription drugs. I certainly can rule out an overdose. She didn't kill herself.
Dr. G thinks back over her autopsy findings, including the unexpected tox results. And after considering all the possibilities, she now knows what happened to Isabel.
Now, I know why she died. I think what happened is she was drinking. I think she got pancreatitis. I think she started killing off part of her pancreas which caused inflammation and irritation to the pancreas, which caused her to not feel well. You don't feel like eating. She didn't want to eat, but she also didn't want to drink. I think that pancreatitis caused her to stop drinking. For her, who always has alcohol running through her vessels, that can be deadly. This is a girl that started drinking at an early age and never stopped. And when she finally stopped because her pancreas was hurting her and she didn't want to take anything by mouth, the lack of alcohol in her blood ultimately caused her death by going into withdrawal. Her brain has gotten so used to that alcohol that it can't go on without it. She probably went into alcohol withdrawal. Your brain is so depressed and the neurotransmitters get so changed. It actually changes the chemicals in your brain that when you don't have that alcohol, you start hallucinating, you start seizing, and you can actually cause your respiratory and heart centers to stop, and you die. If she'd have sought medical intervention with the pancreatitis, her death would probably be avoided because they would have treated her for alcohol withdrawal.
But now Dr. G has one last duty to fulfill. She contacts Isabel's brother.
He was surprised that she had the pancreatitis and that she probably died from a lack of alcohol and not from an overdose. But I think he's relieved that at least it wasn't a suicide. She died the way she lived, and that didn't surprise him. This kind of death is sad. It's a wasted life. The choices we make are often what cause us to die early. If you are that much of an alcoholic and that you mix it with cocaine and you mix it with prescription drugs, that is a recipe, no doubt about it, for an early death and a trip to my morgue.
We'll get into your true crime episode in just a moment. When this one is finished though, make sure your next listen comes from the Always True Crime Network. This show is a part of it, and so is Drunk Women Solving Crime. Every week, comedians Hannah George and Taylor Glenn are joined by a famous face to put their drunk detective skills to the test. The recent episode with Selena Mozinski, also known as Charity Shop Sue, is a must-listen, featuring a story involving riot police, a chimney, and an unexpected ending. And there's more alternative true crime from Strangely as well. Poppy Damon and Luke Jones bring together some of the weirdest true stories from around the world. If you haven't heard about the post-work fishing trip that took an extraterrestrial turn, that should definitely be your next listen. Search for Always True Crime to find these shows and more.
Did an unknown serial killer of gay men once stalk West London? Find out on Murder Mile. Today, I'm standing outside of Bentley Court in Bayswater, W2. 3 streets northeast of the torture of Vincent Carey. 2 streets east of the German tourist slain by the Beast of Bamshire. 1 street north of the Vice Girl killer. And a short walk from the Big Red Hand. Coming soon to Murder Mile. Bentley Court, at 72 to 74 Kensington Gardens Square, is an erroneous 6-storey block of flats. Set amongst tasteful Georgian and Victorian townhouses, with grand Doric columns, elegant tall windows with artistic architraves, and intricately designed wrought iron railings. They're the kind of homes you'd expect great writers to live. But in comparison, Bentley Court looks like a doss house for deadbeats. It's flat, dull, vague, and looks like the architect woke up after a boozy lunch, and with 10 minutes until he had to hand in the designs, thought, Meh, it'll do. Before napping and realising he'd forgotten to add any doors, stairs, floors, walls, and even a roof. But then again, maybe being forgettable is a bonus. On Tuesday the 3rd of June 1980, this was the scene of an until recently unsolved murder. It was one of several brutal and sadistic murders of gay men in the 1970s, all within streets of each other. Its conclusion came about not by technical advancement, but by chance, when after 41 years, the killer gave themselves up. For decades, detectives believed that all 6 of these killings were attributed to the West End gay slayer. But did that now mean he was ready to confess to more? My name is Michael. I am your tour guide. This is Murder Mile. Episode 341, London's Forgotten Gay Slayer. When the murder of gay men in London is mooted, several names sidle into the frame, but we know that this isn't their unreported crimes. Dennis Nilsen was the right era, but the wrong method. Colin Ireland wouldn't emerge for a decade. Michael Lupo wouldn't start killing until 3 years after the last. And the Twilight Sex Killer's mini spree had some odd similarities, but it ceased 20 years before. To explore this tawdry story, we shall begin at the end. On Wednesday the 5th of May 2021 at 9:38 a.m, at Hammersmith Police Station on 226 Shepherd's Bush Road, W6, 61-year-old John Paul, a local man whose tough life had been blighted by prison stints and petty theft, approached the desk officer.
I want to report a crime.
Okay, what happened?
Murder.
The officer asked, who murdered someone? To which John Paul calmly replied,
Me.
He wasn't drunk, unwell, and this wasn't a prank. He was a man for whom the burden of guilt had weighed heavy upon him for decades. You murdered someone, did you? When did this happen? And although after 41 years of silence, his details were still a little sketchy, stating,
1980, April. A man. Just after I'd left Borstal.
He never knew his name. But by 11:34 a.m, detectives have flagged up an unsolved murder worth a look. And by 3:35 p.m, with his fingerprints exactly matching those found at the scene, he was arrested on suspicion of murder. He was formally charged on the 27th of May 2021 and was committed to trial at the Old Bailey. This was one of 6 suspicious murders of gay men: Henry Carr, Dr. Richard Mercy, Carlos Mary Sequoia, Anthony Bird, Harry Williams and Peter Arne, on neighbouring streets and postcodes, W2, SW6, with 2 in SW1 and 2 in SW10. From the 31st of January 1980 to the 1st of August 1983, and linked by detectives as they'd all been sadistically stabbed, battered, and sometimes posed and set alight. But who was the slayer of gay men in London's West End? His most infamous killing was the murder of the MI6 operative and suspected Soviet spy, Henry Carr. Born on the 25th of May 1929, Henry was raised in an area where government departments mistakenly believed that anyone who went to Eton, Harrow or Oxbridge must be a jolly good egg and incapable of anything as beastly as treason. Being bright and educated at the almost as posh Dulwich College, during his national service in the Royal Navy, he specialised in ciphers and codes and speaking fluent French and Arabic. In 1955, he joined MI6 under the guise of the Foreign Office. As a diplomat, he was 3rd Secretary at the British Embassy in Jeddah and Beirut in 1956 and 57, then 2nd Secretary in Beirut for a decade, where he helped build SIS, the Secret Intelligence Service network in the Middle East. And by 1969, he was promoted to 1st Secretary at the Foreign Office. But his whole career came crashing down, owing to his connections to one of Britain's most infamous spies. In Beirut, he'd shared a flat with Kim Philby, one of the Cambridge Five, a spy ring who, along with Guy Burgess, Donald Maclean, Anthony Blunt and John Cairncross, who was a high-ranking British intelligence officer who led MI6's anti-Soviet counterintelligence unit while working as a double agent for the Russians. In 1963, Kim Philby defected to Moscow, where he lived until his death as a hero of the Soviet Union. Suspicion had already fallen on Henry Carr, not only because of his close friendship with Philby, but as at least 2 of the Cambridge Five were alcoholics, as Henry was, and with 2 being gay, as Henry was, and one of them bisexual. Before his 40th birthday in 1969, he was dismissed due to character weakness. By 1974, divorced from his wife and with his 2 teenage sons living in Italy, he was an administrator for the Institute of Civil Engineers. But his health was bad as he spent roughly £100 a week, £1,400 a day on alcohol. He lived in a series of cheap and shoddy lodgings, and being lonely, he was a familiar face in the public toilets of Piccadilly, and most nights brought home a slew of anonymous rent boys back to his flat. On the 31st of January 1981, with his broken arm in a cast, 51-year-old Henry moved into the top-floor flat of a 5-storey brown-bricked end terrace house at 52 Cathcart Road in Kensington, SW10. He was described as quiet and urbane. He kept to himself, rarely had any friends, and never spoke about his life. On Thursday the 25th of February 1981, at 4 p.m, he made an odd phone call to his only friend, Clive Clithold, who said,
I knew he was desperate because he gave me his phone number, which he was obsessively secret about. His actual words to me were, I have some big problems. But he never said what.
Clive agreed to meet him as they both worked together at the ICE. But 3 days later, Henry was dead. At 8 p.m, on Saturday the 25th of February, firefighters were called to a blaze in Henry's bedroom, believed to have been started by an overturned electric fire. Inside, his semi-clad body was badly charred, but the second they spotted the telltale signs of multiple stab wounds, they knew that this was a murder. Detective Superintendent Brian Sargent found no evidence of forced entry, but Henry was last seen returning to his home at 5 p.m, and no one was seen or heard leaving. Nothing was stolen. He was dressed in just his pants and vest. No sex had taken place, but in what was described as a sustained assault. Although 6'1" and heavily built, pathologist Dr. Ian West stated,
He appears not to have defended himself. He was partially strangled, slashed across the face.
And with his own kitchen knife, he was repeatedly stabbed in the chest and the abdomen, causing severe wounds to the heart, liver, lungs, and intestines. D.S. Sargent said,
This was clearly a brutal and vicious murder, but its motive is a complete mystery.
Many people saw this suspicious death of a suspected spy as an assassination by MI6 or the KGB. But Scotland Yard and the Foreign Office would state,
We have ruled out any intelligence motives.
40 rent boys were interviewed, but none were charged. A suspect was hunted. White, 5'8", early 20s, slim, with blonde hair and a dark complexion, wearing tight jeans and high-heeled boots, but never found. Compared to many others, his murder was unremarkable. A depressed alcoholic with a secret sex life who was down on his luck. If he hadn't worked for MI6, his death would barely have made the papers, and the conspiracy theorists who love plot twists wouldn't have got so hot under the collar. But the detectives stated,
We believe he was the victim of a vicious killer who selected his targets from London's homosexual community. Some of the wounds suggest a link with an earlier knife murder of another homosexual.
as his sadistic killing wasn't the first by London's forgotten gay slayer, and it wouldn't be the last. Dr. Richard Peter Mercy was born on the 5th of May 1943 in Stourbridge, Worcestershire, to his father Derek and his mother Madge. And having trained as a dental surgeon, he became wealthy and successful. In July 1978, 18 months prior, he'd sold his dental practice in Cadogan Place to Dr. Robert Palmer for £30,000, so he could finally focus on becoming a property developer. He owned a cottage in Chichester and 2 flats at 34 Eaton Place in Belgravia, an exclusive residence beautifully decorated with intricate arts and pricey antiques, with a flat on the 4th floor worth £50,000 which he'd rented out, but flat 5 on the 5th was his. Like Henry, he was quiet, kind, he kept to himself, and also being 6 foot tall and dressed in sharp pinstripe suits. As Detective Superintendent Snape stated,
By day, he was a respectable member of society. But at night, he would go round to toilets on Hampstead Heath frequented by known homosexuals and took them back to his flat. His direction of sexual desire was sinking lower all the time. He was getting into tendencies of wanting more and more bizarre physical acts.
what was referred to as rough trade. On Tuesday the 29th of January 1980 at 7 p.m, 38-year-old Richard brought from a King's Cross off licence 20 Marlboro cigarettes and a 4-pack of Carlsberg, which was odd as he didn't drink. He was seen standing outside of a house on Oakley Street, then possibly he went out clubbing, but this was the last time he was seen alive. A neighbour later said that, sometime after midnight, "I heard screams coming from the flat, but have no idea what it was about," as many simply put it down to him having many visitors and leading a gay social life. On Thursday the 31st of January 1980, just after noon, Winifred Ryan, his cleaner for 10 years, arrived and noticed his front door was only partially locked from the outside. She noted spots of blood on the stairs carpet and recalled, "I went into the bedroom. The door was wide open." His body had lain there for 44 hours, among a scene in which the blood had splattered on every wall, door and surface. He was naked, with a ligature around his neck, implying what detectives said
was bizarre sexual activities.
but with no evidence of any sex, and the only items stolen from his flat being his watch, his keys, and his Mercedes. Robbery didn't seem to be the killer's main motive. As first he was strangled, then as pathologist Dr. Ian West suggested, either he'd been attacked with a blunt instrument, or someone
Had inflicted severe injuries, consistent with someone having stamped on his head.
fracturing his face and his neck. The police were certain that they'd find his killer,
As his assailant or assailants would have been heavily bloodstained, being in an uncontrollable frenzy, committing this murder and losing control.
Detectives at Rochester Road Police Station interviewed 3,000 people and took 2,000 statements to determine his whereabouts prior to his death. And although they found his bloodstained clothes inside his other car, a white Ford Capri, every clue and angle quickly dried up, and the inquest concluded it as
An unlawful killing by persons unknown.
all the police knew was that
We are satisfied that his homosexuality led to his death.
unlike the murder of Henry Carr, it was also linked to Carlos Mary Sequoia. Like the others, Carlos had no connections to Henry or Richard. They didn't seem acquainted, and the only connections they had was that their deaths would be linked to London's forgotten gay slayer. Carlos Mary Sequoia came from Santiago, Chile, where he'd trained as a lawyer, and came to Britain in 1970. As a 40-year-old administrator to the External Degrees Department of the Faculty of Medicine at London University, he was well liked and respected.
A quiet and kind man who abhorred violence and coarse company.
He spoke fluent English with hardly a trace of an accent, and was living with a male dancer of the Modern Ballet Company in Flat 2 on the ground floor of 22 Gunter Grove, a red brick 4-storey terraced house in West Brompton in Kensington, SW10, just 2 streets from Henry Carr. With his boyfriend on tour in Europe, he was last seen alive entering his flat at 5:45 p.m. on Sunday the 12th of October 1980. He was alone, no sounds were heard, and no one was seen leaving his flat. On the Monday, his boss telephoned as he'd failed to turn up for work, which was unusual. On the Tuesday, they notified the Chilean embassy. And on the Wednesday at 7 p.m, police broke in and found his body. Carlos was found in bed, partially dressed, with his throat slashed with a knife 5 times. His exposed chest and abdomen had been severely mutilated. He had been stabbed forcefully right through the heart, and with many of the killing's more sinister details deliberately left out of the newspapers to trap the killer, detectives stated that the body
Was decorated in a macabre way. It was an obscene, vicious murder. Whoever did it must have a warped mind with a macabre sense of humour, and he might very well kill again.
Again, his homosexuality was listed as leading to his death and attributed to London's gay slayer. But no one knew who his killer was, and as far as they knew, he'd never shown his face or left a fingerprint. On the 2nd of August 1981, 1 year later, having extradited a man in his 20s via Interpol, DCS Ronald Hardy interviewed an unnamed suspect about the murders of Henry Carr, Dr. Richard Mercy, and Carlos Mary Sequoia. The report was submitted to the DPP, but the suspect was never named, tried, or convicted. 3 men were dead, with no one arrested for their bizarre and motiveless murders. And yet just 3 months before Carlos's killing, another gay man was slain in the West End. New Zealand-born Anthony Jackson Bird was a 42-year-old barman at the Railway Tap pub in Bayswater, a porter at Paddington Station, and an attendant at the Porchester Hall swimming baths close to his flat. On the night of Thursday the 3rd of June 1980, he was seen on nearby Queensway looking for a man to have sex with, and he told his friends,
"I've got my eye on a black lad."
and he was never seen alive again. As with Carlos, having missed work, at 3 p.m. on Friday the 6th, 3 days later, as Anthony was reported missing, but with no reply from his flat, officers broke down the door with a sledgehammer and found his body.
The door was securely locked from the outside. The curtains were fully drawn. The room was in a state as if it had been ransacked. There was a sideboard with nothing on it, although they noted there was a pattern in the dust marks which indicated that objects had recently been moved.
Bottles of alcohol and some inexpensive electrical items had been stolen. But was it robbery? Anthony was naked, lying on his side, his knees tucked up to his chest with his hands and ankles tied with a black cord. He'd been manually strangled, resulted in his neck being fractured, and Dr. Rufus Compton, the pathologist, stated that using 2 short planks of wood, Anthony was beaten unconscious, leaving deep bruises to his head, jaw, chest, thighs, and the base of his penis. Unlike the other victims, neighbours heard screams but put it down to rough sex. And although it looked like it, he hadn't been sexually assaulted. No one was arrested or convicted. It remained unsolved and was linked to the 4 previous murders. The same was said of 63-year-old Harry Williams, a retired former boys' school teacher from Surrey, who lived alone, was a quiet man who was said to be a bit of a loner, who picked up gay men in the pubs of Fulham, and given his all-too-obvious gingery wig, he was known in gay circles as Harry the Hare. On the afternoon of Sunday the 24th of October 1982, having drank at the Queen's Head, a gay pub on Tyrone Road in Chelsea, he met a young man, white, 25-ish, 5'10", with black greasy hair, in a blue denim jacket and cream flared trousers. They left at 2:15 p.m. and drove off in Harry's car. Like Carlos and Henry, at 3:40 a.m., his death was only discovered when firefighters attended a blaze at his flat at Bagley's Lane in Fulham, SW6, just streets from Carlos's flat. In an oddly similar way, he was naked, but he hadn't been raped. He'd been sadistically battered, and with a steak knife taken from his own kitchen, his chest, neck, and abdomen had been stabbed and savagely mutilated. DCS Mike O'Leary of Fulham CID described it as
a vicious and brutal murder.
But with no suspect seen and a £560 Sony Betamax recorder missing, his homosexuality was again seen as the motive, not the robbery. And then there was one final murder, again connected to the others and attributed to the gay slayer. 64-year-old Peter Arne was an actor who'd appeared in over 50 films and TV series, like The Return of the Pink Panther, The Cockleshell Heroes, Straw Dogs, Secret Army, and Triangle. Like the others, he was described as inoffensive and lonely, and a man of great charm, who often invited anonymous men back to his flat, and had a fondness for youngish men who looked like they were down on their luck. On Monday the 1st of August 1983, Peter attended a costume fitting at the BBC, having achieved his lifelong ambition by securing the role of Range, a colonist leader in Series 21 of Doctor Who, opposite Peter Davison. And with a week before filming was due to commence, the next day he was due to head to Plymouth for a break. Just shy of 11 p.m, hearing a violent quarrel, his neighbour at 54 Hounds Place in Kensington SW1 found Peter slumped against a wall of his ground floor flat. His door was open but not broken. His flat wasn't ransacked. His watch, wallet and ring were untouched. And having been beaten, strangled, stabbed and viciously attacked with a log taken from the fire and a wooden stool while he was wearing his pyjamas, his blood had spurted up the walls of the communal stairwell and he died of severe head injuries. A photo fit of a young man seen loitering nearby and eating a jar of honey was published in the local papers. And with an entry for the 8th of August, just 1 week away, in Peter's diary, reading, "Meet Giuseppe," leading to no suspects. His brutal murder was linked to the 5 other unsolved killings: Henry, Carlos, Anthony, Richard and Harry, who, as the press said,
frequented gay haunts in London's twilight world and fitted a pattern of sadistic murders.
6 dead men, all gay, all stabbed and strangled, with strong hints of sadism in their deaths. They either knew or trusted their killer, but none of them knew each other. They were murdered inside their own homes, but their killer hadn't broken in. In fact, each of them had let him in. Sex seemed to have been the victim's motive to invite them back, but no sex had taken place, and they hadn't been molested. So who was London's forgotten gay slayer? On Wednesday the 5th of May 2021 at 9:38 a.m. at Hammersmith Police Station, 61-year-old John Paul told the desk officer,
"I want to report a crime, a murder."
As a former resident of Ladbroke Grove in Kensington, he admitted that on the night of Tuesday the 3rd of June 1980, he was in the Queensway area and was propositioned by a 42-year-old barman called Anthony Jackson Bird. Being a thief, recently released from Borstal, and looking for something to steal and to sell, he told detectives,
"He talked me into having sex with him. He took me back to his place. I tied him up with a black cord His ankles, hands, arms. On the bed, naked. There was a piece of wood. I used it to batter him.
And having stolen anything worth any value, he remained silent about the killing for 41 years, until the weight of guilt bearing down on his soul caused him to confess to the detectives. On Monday the 24th of October 2022, at the Old Bailey, although he denied any intent to do Anthony Bird any serious harm, having pleaded guilty to manslaughter by provocation, John Paul was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life with a minimum term of 19 years. He may never see freedom. So with one of these 6 murders conclusively solved, attributed to a convicted killer, and all 6 linked by detectives owing to their sadistic similarities, does that mean that we found London's forgotten gay slayer? A crazed maniac on par with the likes of Dennis Nielsen, Colin Ireland, and Michael Lupo? No. As happens with everything in life, as humans we naturally seek out patterns and connections to keep ourselves safe and sane, even when there aren't any. In the case of London's forgotten gay slayer, 6 men, all gay, all quiet, all with secrets, and all living a few streets apart, were murdered in a similar way, in their own homes, and brutalized in a way with as many similarities as there were dissimilarities. But it's easier to believe that they were somehow linked, even though life is full of coincidences. Each victim was murdered using something stolen from their own home. But isn't that what killers do when the murder isn't planned and they're driven by emotion? Each victim mistakenly lured their killer back for sex, even though they may not have been gay. But did they agree to this just to gain access to their most valuable items, hidden behind the locked door of their flat? Did they tie them up, beat them and stab them out of sadism, a fear of homosexuality, or to silence the only witness to their crime? It's unlikely to be one man, as all of the suspects seen near the victims were white, but physically different. And Anthony Bird's killer was black. Of the 6 men whose deaths were initially linked to a sadistic killer, John Paul was proven without a shadow of doubt to be Anthony Bird's murderer. And although Harry the Hare Williams and Henry Carr the Spy, their deaths remain unsolved, the other 3 would be proven to the maximum level of the law. The killer of Carlos Mary Sequoia was Nadine El Ghazal, a waiter from Tangiers, who had strong feelings for Carlos, was convicted on the 9th of October 1992, 12 years after the murder, having previously confessed of it to his wife, only for her to tell the police when they split up. On the 30th of March 1986, 6 years after the murder of Dr. Richard Mercy, a new team of detectives found evidence linking it to 27-year-old Brian Kirkpatrick Williams of Tottenham. He was arrested, charged, and remanded, but with the prosecution unable to prove his undeniable guilt, he was released. As for Peter Arne, 3 key pieces of evidence would solve the case in just 3 days. With Peter liking young men who were down on their luck, a bearded homeless man was seen by his flat, eating a pot of honey prior to the murder. In Peter's diary, he had written, "Meet Giuseppe." And on the 4th of August 1983, just 3 days after the murder, the body of 32-year-old Italian teacher Giuseppe Peruzzi was found drowned in the River Thames at Wandsworth. His ex-girlfriend said, "He was a good boy, inclined to be over-anxious, who'd lost his trust in women and hoped to find men more understanding." Fingerprints and saliva found at Peter's flat proved it was him. And at Westminster Coroner's Court in 1983, DCI Lander stated,
Everything points towards Giuseppe being Peter's killer. And having performed a brutal murder, then his mind would have turned to killing himself.
So with at least 4 of the 6 murders attributed to 4, if not 6, different men, rather than a gay slayer, this begs the question, Did London's forgotten gay slayer ever actually exist? Or was he merely concocted due to a homosexual bias by the police and the press, and unable to solve each crime and to attribute it to a fictional serial killer? Did the police take the easy route in a time of corruption and ultimately pin each of those murders to its most likely of suspects? There we go, folks. Oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. It's early. I was meant to be recording... welcome to Extra Mile, the unscripted, unedited bit. I was meant to be recording yesterday, but the weather... as I mentioned before, I can't really record in the boat because when it rains, it echoes on the roof. And so I looked at the rain. It was like 4 o'clock it's going to start raining, and it was like 3:30. I was like, there's no... because it takes like 2 hours to record this. And I thought there's no way I could record this. So I left it, and there was no rain that evening, and there was no rain overnight. It was meant to rain this morning, and there's no rain at all. Honestly, the Met Office, I think what they do is they type up any old crap, and then when it comes to the hour that the weather's going to happen, I think someone just looks out the window and they go, "Oh, it's not raining. Well, we'll change the app so it says not raining." Have a look at the Met Office app. Take screen grabs of it, like on a day, and then as you go through the day, keep looking at it and keep taking screen grabs, and they keep changing it all the time. They keep going, "Oh no, it's not raining now." Utter bastards. Anyway, welcome to Extra Mile, unscripted, unedited bit. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I am, as of time of recording, about less than 2 weeks away from hopefully the move on the boat. I've just been up to see the locks. It looks like they've fixed the one lock. It's open. It's not open that we can go through, but it's open that they've tested it and they've flooded it, so that's good. The second lock is half done. The third one they haven't started, but if they get up to speed, it should be done on time, which is great. So I'm just sorting out stuff on the boat. As mentioned, solar power and Wi-Fi and all the repairs I need to do, and I've just started putting flowers on the roof as well to make it look a little bit nicer. So there we go. And last night I had a good long hour-long chat with Paul at True Crime Enthusiast. That was really good. So we're chatting through stuff coming up for the year and a new multi-part series that we're working on, and we're mapping that out. So really looking forward to that. So that's going to be good. Thank you to new Patreon subscribers. Thank you to Gareth Vaughan and Sydney Mannheim. So thank you to Gareth and thank you to Sydney. Thank you for becoming Patreon subscribers. Much appreciated. Don't forget, if you are a Patreon subscriber, especially if you live overseas, when you're asked to put in your address, please make sure you put in the right address, because I keep sending off goodie envelopes of goodies to people overseas, and then a month later a very battered envelope makes its way all the way back, and it costs quite a lot to send, especially America at the moment. It costs a real fortune. It costs more to send a little package to America than the package costs. And then when it comes back, then obviously I have to redo them, and it costs a fortune. So don't forget to check your address. But thank you to everyone who subscribes to be a patron. It's much appreciated. Right, let's crack into this. We'll do some quiz questions, and we'll crack into some extra stuff in this episode. So question number 1, what month did John Paul say he murdered Anthony Bird? Question number 2, where had he just come out of when he'd murdered Anthony Bird? Question number 3, Henry Carr, the spy, suspected spy, spoke what other 2 languages after English? Question number 4, you can see here the Tweety birds outside. I had to put, normally I wouldn't have, I'm in a nice quiet area, normally I wouldn't have my my sound protectors on the windows. When I say sound protectors, I mean pillows against the window, but the birds were really tweety this morning. Question number 4, Kim Philby was one of the Cambridge 5, but name one of the others. Question number 6, what excuse did MI6 give for sacking Henry Carr, this being a euphemism for him being drunk and gay? Question number 7, what brand of cigarettes did Dr. Richard Mercy buy? Question 7, I think. What brand of beer did Dr. Richard Mercy buy? So that was what cigarettes, what beer? And question number 8, Richard had a blue Mercedes, but what other car did he have? So let's dive into this. Okie dokie. This is one of these. This is one of these episodes that I've had on the cards for ages, and it started off with the murder of Henry Carr, which was always interesting. It was an MI6 spy, potential Soviet double agent, and I thought it'd be a really interesting case to cover. But the problem is, there wasn't a lot written about his murder, and when I kind of pieced everything together, I think I had enough for about half an episode. And I was like, how am I really going to be able to solve this? But then I started looking around at all the other murders that happened in the area around that time with similarities. And then I started noticing that the police, like with Henry's murder, they said, I saw a report where it was like, it's linked to Carlos. So I was like, right, well, I'll add in Carlos's story into this. And then I added that in, and then they said that they suspected that it's linked to Richard Mercy as well. And then it just, suddenly, when I got to the end, there were 6 murders. And I was like, is this a multi-part series? The problem is there wasn't a lot written about. All of these murders are quite slim. In fact, in some cases, on the episode, it probably only comes across as like a couple of minutes each case. But that's because there really isn't that much out there. There really isn't. There really wasn't heavily investigated, and it wasn't well reported in the press as well. So what I decided to do was to dive into this. Now, the press never called him the gay slayer, but it was always... It's weird because normally the press can't wait to dive on top of something and say, let's give this person a crazy name, therefore we can latch it onto. But I think because the press didn't give a shit, therefore they didn't give him a name. Which normally they would do. Normally the names of killers come from the press, not from the police and not from the killer themselves. This is a press thing deliberately engineered in order to make it so audiences can kind of recognise who these people are, but it also gives it traffic and makes it exciting. Same as Jack the Ripper, things like that, entirely invented by the press. But there's, it's... There are all these 6 murders, and they all had similarities, and the police were like, we think these are all connected. But I thought that was fascinating, that the fact that there are similarities, but the more I looked at it, the more I could see that there were dissimilarities. And then, because I'd also on the cards as well, I also wanted to cover the murder of Anthony Bird, because he was one of my 6, and then because Anthony Bird's killer confessed, I thought that's an interesting way to come into it, is to say, there's all these 6 murders and they're all similar, and the police say they're connected, and we've got one killer connected to this one. So did he kill all of them? And the answer is no. It's just their similarities, and that's the whole thing, is that we spend all of our time looking for similarities and connections, and it's what our brain does. And the problem is we ignore, it's confirmation bias, isn't it? We ignore everything that doesn't back up what we want to believe, rather than just sitting there and going, okay, I'm going to accept all these pieces of information. We go, yeah, I'll accept that. No, I won't accept that. It's like with Jack the Ripper, the amount of people who go, I'm a ripperologist, blah, blah, blah. But when you talk to them, they've already made their decision about who they think it is, and they will accept such pieces of information, but they won't accept others. And you just think, well, that's not the way to come to a conclusion. You have to be open-minded. And that's what this very much is with this one. I think it's very easy with this to think it must be a gay killer, because look at all this, all the stabbing and the strangling. But if you think about it, we've covered cases like this before, where if you think about it as the fact that this isn't likely to be a single killer going on the rampage and going, gay men, yeah, I'm gonna attack him, I'm gonna tie him up and then stab him, and horrific. It's more likely that these men, as mentioned, were going to pubs and were looking to pick up rent boys, likely to be gay, likely not to be gay as well. As I say, gay for pay, a way to earn money. Obviously, if you're a male prostitute, the likelihood of picking up a female punter is very slim. It's men who really pick up prostitutes. Therefore, there's a lot of rent boys out there who pick up gay men, but aren't gay themselves. They just do it for money, and especially given the fact that many of them would have drug issues as well, drug addictions. Therefore, we've seen this so many times where someone goes into an apartment and kind of pretends, a little bit of a honey trap and like, oh yeah, I'm going to have sex with you. When they get there, they freak out, they panic, they tie the person up, they think that the person tied up is good enough, therefore they can steal stuff and escape, but the person starts to scream and then they panic. And it looks like that's what happened with John Paul, the murderer of Anthony Bird. As he said, he wasn't gay. I was about to reveal one of my quiz questions then. He was in need of money. He needed things to steal. He was flirted with by Anthony Bird. He wasn't gay himself, but he could see that, go back to the man's flat, a potential good opportunity to rob and mug him. If you think about it, it's in the privacy of his own flat. Get him there. Anthony Bird wants to be tied up. Brilliant. The perfect thing for a burglar. You've got the victim, and instead of breaking into someone's house and the victim is alone and by themselves and you break in and they're screaming, you have someone who literally lets you into their house, opens the door with their key, lets you in, probably gives you a drink, and then says, would you mind tying me up? Perfect. Oh, by the way, look around my flat. Here's all my electrical stuff. There's my wallet there. It's a dangerous world when people invite strangers into their own homes. And I think that's what we have here, especially as it's a stranger who will have drug issues, or potentially drug issues as well. So they won't really have qualms about causing damage to the other person. Also, they may be on drugs at the time, or they may be coming off drugs at the time. Therefore, they're in a dangerous state. Therefore, they're emotional. Therefore, they're not too sure what they're doing. They may also have mental health problems as well. So there's a lot of these kind of killings that happen, but it's too easy to kind of sit down and just go, okay, this must all be one killer, but it's not. As we saw with the Twilight Sex Killer, with that was interesting because there were similarities where they were tied up again, and even with this case, I saw hints of the Twilight Sex Killer in this case, where some of the press reported this incorrectly and said that one of the victims was found inside a cupboard, which he wasn't. That was the Twilight Sex Killer 20 years before, but there's kind of a bleed over from that. So, interesting case. So as we can see, the first one was 31st of January 1980, and the last one was 1st of August 1983. And in the press, these are all linked all together, and it kind of makes sense. So I'm having a swig of very, very cold tea. The locations are very similar to each other. They're not too far away, and in some cases there was at least 3 of them that were literally 2 to 3 streets away. But does that mean they're connected? No, of course it doesn't. It's like when they say, oh, the murder of prostitutes. Oh, it must be connected. Why must it be connected? Why? I mean, do we turn around and say, oh, well, all the victims were blonde, well, they must be connected. Oh, at least 3 of the victims were called Peter. Oh, well, they must be connected. It's not. It's just coincidences. It's just we're unable to cope with the fact that coincidences do happen. So let's just see what we've got about Henry Carr. As you can see, the collapse of his life, all based around the fact that, well, it is said that it's based around the fact that he was very, very close friends with Kim Philby, one of the Cambridge Five. I think a big part of it was down to the fact that he was an alcoholic. 2 of the Cambridge Five were alcoholics as well, possibly 3. 2 of the Cambridge Five were gay, 1 was bisexual, and this is the same with Henry as well. This is so I think because of his connections, therefore he was suspected as well. There was another connection as well. Henry had worked under Sir Roger Hollis, the former head of MI5, and there were allegations that Hollis had also spied for Russia. Henry had also, even though he'd been dismissed, he was, between 1969 and 1974, working as a British consul in Panama, but after that his life really started to deteriorate. I think because of his drinking was part of the problem. As mentioned, drinking about £100 a week. He used to booze in the Stevens Tavern tavern near the House of Commons where he'd meet MPs and journalists. So he's quite senior at that point, but he's working for the Institute of Civil Engineering. Drank a lot of beer, gins and whiskies. And as the police said, his life really deteriorated to such of a state. In fact, he was going into the pub before going to work. Spent a lot of the money he had picking up rent boys in and around Piccadilly, and really didn't have anywhere to live. He was living in a number of cheap hotels and begging lodgings from friends. He was very secretive about his life, but some people did say that he spoke in kind of code about the things he used to be. And he did say to his friend Clive, some people believe that he was the fourth man. Kim Philby was regarded as the third man. Some people said that he was meant to be the fourth man. He wasn't the fourth man. But I think that's the thing. When your life collapses, you focus on the past, don't you? You focus on the great moments in your life. As we know, at 4 p.m. on Saturday the 28th, 1981, he made a phone call to his friend Clive Clissold, saying that he needed an urgent meeting and he had big problems, but he never said anything more about that. And that's the problem. He was an incredibly secretive guy, so he never told people anything about this, and he didn't have any family either. His wife was overseas, as were his sons, so... murdered inside the house. We don't know whether the fire was deliberate. This was one of the issues, is that even the fire brigade said the fire was caused by an overturned electrical fire, which they could not tell if it had been upset accidentally or deliberately. There did seem to be a delay on this as well. So he died by the multiple stab wounds with a kitchen knife, possibly having occurred up to 24 hours before the fire broke out. So there's a similarity there between the Anthony Bird case, and we'll get to that in a bit, where with Anthony Bird, John Paul broke in, tied him up, and then it looks like he panicked and fled. And then he came back about 24 hours later, realising that the body was still there and no one had called the police. So that's when he broke in. He got back in because he'd taken the keys, and then he stole some electrical stuff and some drink. So that seems to be the same with this one, which is why it seems very much to be a rent boy who attacked him, killed him, maybe got angry for some reason, maybe they had a fight, we just don't know, and then came back afterwards and stole something. Even though it's really easy to look at this and go, yeah, it must be KGB, it must be MI6, it must be the government. One of the governments wanted to kill him because of the job he did. It's just, there's nothing there that rings true. He hadn't been part of MI6 for 11 years. And if you think about it, he'd been working for the Institute of Civil Engineering for the last 4. So why would they want to kill someone who works as an engineer? Or an administrator for the engineers. We've also got Richard Mercy as well. I really do think that this is... if you think about it, he's a guy who lives in a very expensive flat. It's tastefully decorated. It's surrounded by nice stuff. As even his landlady, not the landlady, the cleaner said, he kept quiet about his homosexuality, but he would invite gay men back to his flat all the time. The neighbours said there was always kind of sex noises going on. His flat was full of very expensive things. None of those were stolen, but clearly someone, whether they deliberately wanted to steal the things or not, because his watch was stolen, his wallet was stolen, so that's easy stuff to steal. The keys to his blue Mercedes was stolen, but that was it. They didn't steal anything else. And you would think if you're in a flat which is full of lots of expensive trinkets and antiques and stuff like that, you would steal things that would be easy to sell or easy to, jewellery, stuff you can get rid of, but they didn't. So half me does wonder whether this was a sex game pushed a little too far, maybe with an anger angle going on there, maybe there was some kind of drugs involved, we just don't know. But I don't think it was a serial killer going, "Ooh, I'm going to murder someone, ooh, brilliant, yeah." It just doesn't ring true. Especially with the violence against him as well. As mentioned, no sexual assault. I think that's one of the key things with there being no sexual assault in this but there does seem to be tying up and restraining at some point. That if it is a rent boy, they would be bored of wanting to do sex and maybe not wanting to have sex, and maybe that was the motivation for this. Maybe it wasn't a rent boy, maybe it was just someone who was invited back, maybe, as with John Paul, wasn't gay, maybe thought to themselves, thought that they were being invited. We've had this on cases before when gay men have invited back a non-gay man back to their flat for drinks, not realising that they were being chatted up, just thinking, oh, I've just met a nice bloke and he wants to take me back to his flat for some drinks. Yeah, we'll talk about football and engines. Not realising that there was going to be some bumpy slop. I don't even know what that means. I just made that up. But that could be it. And maybe being offended by the fact that a homosexual man was trying to crack onto him, maybe that led to the outpouring of anger. That's where this comes from. It could be as simple as that. We just don't know. The suspect who was arrested May 1980 by Interpol, we just don't know. Who that person is. I searched, I couldn't find a name, and I think because they weren't charged, therefore their name wasn't mentioned. Brian Kirkpatrick Williamson, 27 years old, unemployed, of Seven Sisters Road in Tottenham, charged with the murder of Richard Mercy, 30th of March 1986, so 6 years after the murder. That's as far as that goes. With that, on the 13th of June 1986, Eric Crowther, the magistrate for Horse Ferry Road Magistrates Court, he had a real go at the prosecution because they were dithering for a long time about bringing their evidence forward, and it seems as if they had enough evidence to take it to court. They had enough evidence to take it to the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions, but there were issues with it at the Magistrates Court in order to take it to criminal court, Crown Court. And therefore he said, I give the prosecution until next Thursday to put their house in order. Otherwise he will need to be released. And as far as I can see, Brian Kirkpatrick Williamson was released. So he was never convicted of Richard Mercy's murder. Therefore Richard's murder remains unsolved. But the police believe that he was the number one suspect. But we have to also appreciate as well, a new detective team led the new inquiry into this, and they were based at West End Central Police Station. And as we've covered before, this is an era of mass police corruption. We're going to dive into police corruption in episode 340, so we've got a lot more on that, but we've already dealt with that with the Gunter Padola case. If you go back to those ones, the shattered memories of Gunter Padola, but also the Scourge of Soho. Last year we covered the case of Detective Sergeant Tanky Challoner, who was one of many corrupt officers in West End Central, and that was the case where they were pulling these guys in for charges they'd never committed, and then basically either beating them up or just framing them for all these cases. So we're still in that era back then. So this Brian Kirkpatrick Williamson, unemployed, of Seven Sisters Road, he could just be a random guy that they were just like, yep, let's just frame him because they just want to get the numbers down. Carlos's murder, I think I've pretty much put everything in there. As you can see, the scene had been decorated. It's really weird. There's few details on this case, and I've put everything I can in there, but they deliberately left out the most bizarre details about it because what they wanted was not to tell the press, and therefore when they sit down with their suspect and the suspect goes, I don't know what they mean by bizarre and macabre, but maybe something to do with dildos. So let's say the killer accidentally goes, yeah, and then I shoved a dildo in his mouth. If it's not in the press and he mentions that he must be the killer, and that's what they're trying to do. Therefore there's not a lot in the press, but because they never had a suspect on that, it kind of died. But 18th of December 1980, as mentioned, Nadine El Ghazal, 36, appeared at Horseferry Road Magistrates Court charged with the murder of Carlos. Nadine denied killing Carlos, but at the Old Bailey it was told that he'd confessed to his wife after the murder, and she'd informed the police when they split up in 1990. So she'd held on to that fact for a decade. He was convicted 9th of October 1992. So he ended up in prison, a life sentence, for murdering Carla. So that is sorted, as is Anthony Bird's murder. That's sorted. So out of the 6, that's 2 so far. And then we've just had the Brian Kirkpatrick. Potentially, that's 3. There's the Anthony Bird one. We've... it was kind of lucky with that one that he did confess to bits of it. He said, I bound his wrists and then later cut them loose. He took me back to his place. I tied him with a cord. I think the cord was black. I'm not sure. I tied him with a cord, his ankles, his hands, his arms, on the bed naked. We went into the bedroom. There was no sex, but that's kind of... I think, as mentioned, he's seeing an opportunity. He then said, then there was a piece of wood. I used a piece of wood to batter him. Police found pieces of wood at the scene which were used to batter him unconscious. John Paul stole the keys and then returned to the flat later that night to steal Tony's belongings. Police believe that the killing was not planned. It was initially out of anger, and then he returned seeing an opportunity for cash. As mentioned, he was really broke at the time. But this was John Paul, and as mentioned in the episode, it just the guilt of it just got him. With the murder of Harry Williams, this is barely mentioned. This was Harry the Hare, a real nightmare to kind of research this one. It was barely covered at all. There was almost nothing. There was nothing on there's no Crime Watch, and Police 5 really didn't cover it at all. So, but as we can see on there, a similar suspect to others, white, early 20s, 5'10", slim. This is where it differs. Black, greaseback swept hair with blue short denim jacket and cream flared trousers. Well, lovely. There are similarities with some of the people that were seen. Early 20s, average height, slim. But if you think about it, that's what you'd expect from kind of a rent boy. You'd expect young, you'd expect slim, you'd expect not particularly tall. Elfin-like. That's what I'd kind of imagine in my kind of mind's eye. So given the fact that there's similarities there, I get that. But physically, they were very different. What else have we got? Same as with the others as well, stabbed with a knife found in the flat. So none of these killers bring anything with them. If you were a serial killer, you would bring a weapon with you. You would, unless you're the Blackout Ripper, who was an arrogant tosser and just used what he found lying around. But most would bring something with them. If you were going to tie someone up, you would bring something with you. If that was your MO, you'd pretend to be gay. You'd go into a known gay haunt, you'd lure them out, you go, let's go back to your place, you tie them up, and then you'd kill them with the weapon you brought with them. You wouldn't go searching around going, I wonder if they've got a steak knife. And on your way out, think, I know, I'll nick a Sony Betamax recorder, which back in the 1980s, that would have weighed a ton. And with Peter Arne, so it's interesting, in some places, some sources still list him as unsolved, but it is solved. It's always been solved. Let's just see if I can find some more details. There was already, one of the witnesses, Peter Gray, the neighbour, had already seen a man, bearded, homeless and poor looking, lurking around the building before the murder. He looked suspicious because there was no reason for him to be there. He seemed worried, and I thought he must be waiting for someone. 2 weeks before, he saw Peter with his back up against the front door, talking to 2 men. Peter Gray said it struck me as odd because they looked like businessmen, but then again he invited lots of men back to his flat. A photo of it was issued, which was identical of the young man seen loitering nearby eating a jar of honey. So obviously this killer, Giuseppe Peruzzi, 32-year-old Italian teacher, member of the local Communist Party and town councillor from Nagra near Verona, described as a good boy but inclined to be anxious. Peter Arne had been providing him with food over the last couple of weeks and invited him round to the flat and things like that. As mentioned, 4th of August 1983, 3 days after Arne's murder, the body was found at the Thames at Wandsworth. He was naked, but as far as they could see, there was no suicide note found. He'd been living rough, his clothes were dirty, and police surmised that he may have gone into the water to cool down. His blood-stained clothes with Peter's blood on it were later found upstream at Putney, the only clothing on him being a pink scarf which was tied around his ankle, which belonged to Danielle, his ex-girlfriend. In the flat, they found fingerprints belonging to Giuseppe, his saliva, and clothing. So there's proof that he was already in there, and there was no forced entry, which is, as mentioned, similar to in all these cases. But then again, these are people who have invited other people into their homes. Westminster Coroner's Court, October 1983, a verdict of unlawful killing for Arne and suicide by Perussi. I think that's... Let me just check that. Yeah. Wednesday the 19th of October 1983, police name Giuseppe Perussi as their prime suspect in Peter Arne's murder, and it was then concluded at the inquest. I think that is all I want to do on that. Yep, I think that's it, folks. Let me just check. Yeah, that's done. Okay, let's do the quiz questions. And then I'm gonna go into town, and I'm gonna meet a friend, and we're gonna go and do some boozing at 4:00. Yes, I'm turning into Eva Green. It's Friday. It's 4:00. People are still working. I'm going down the pub. Can't wait. And then meeting War Hero on Tuesday. My mate War Hero, which is great. And then Beard on Thursday. Looking forward to seeing Beard. And then Saturday, Police Constable Arsenal Guinness's stag do. Dear God, that might be messy. Anyway, question number 1. What month did John Paul say he murdered Anthony Bird? He said it was April, but it was actually in June. Question number 2. Where did he come out of when he murdered Anthony Bird? He'd just come out of Borstal. Question number 3. Henry Carr, the spy, spoke what 2 other languages after English? Russian and Arabic. Question number 4. Kim Philby was one of the Cambridge Five, but name one of the others. You've got Guy Burgess, Donald MacLean, Anthony Blunt, and John Cairncross. Question number 5. What excuse did MI6 give for sacking Henry Carr, being a euphemism for being drunk and gay? They said it was due to character weakness. Question number 6. What brand of cigarettes did Dr. Richard Mercy buy? They were Marlboro. Question number 7. What brand of beer did Dr. Richard Mercy buy? Carlsberg. And question number 8. Richard had a blue Mercedes, but what other car did he have? It was a white Ford Capri. So that's it, folks. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. I'm going to descend my boat into absolute silence, which is always weird. I stopped recording, having been recording for about almost 2 hours, and it's going to go silent very quickly. Anyway, I'm going to have some cake. Lots of love, everyone. Thank you for supporting the show. It's much appreciated. Best wishes. Bye.
Want more true crime? This podcast and loads more are part of the Always True Crime Network. It's packed with box sets to binge and twisted tales you won't find anywhere else. Find your next podcast obsession at alwaystruecrime.com.